Good afternoon, welcome to Rundlii. We're going to be doing another video. This one will be on One Night Revolution. This is by Indie Boards and Cards, as well as Bezier Games. Bezier is the same one I did like Suburbia, Castle Mad Ludwig, or Mad King. So this is kind of it's kind of a sort of similar thing to One Night Ultimate Werewolf. But this one's One Night Revolution. So it's a little bit different as far as how it's played. It has a lot of resembling similar things to it. First off, you're going to have these ID cards. And these ID cards are going to either be Informant, which would be the red card. There will be 3 of them. And then I think there are 10 Rebel cards total. So you'll have mostly Rebel cards. There's 3 Informants. You're also going to have a Specialist card. And the specialist cards will actually give you a specific job that will happen during the course of the night. Now, alternatively, like with One Night Werewolf, it's a little bit different because usually this card you get is going to be your role. But in this one, you actually have your, kind of like your, who you're affiliated with as one card, then your job is a second card. So it ends up interacting a little bit differently. You'll have this star thing here. And this is mostly to figure out who the controller is. The controller is basically the leader of that group. And they're going to do a lot of the initial stuff as far as like talking through specific things and introducing people to what's going to happen next. You'll have your headquarters here. There will be 3 cards put on the headquarters. And this is actually double-sided, so if you want like a daytime mission, you can also do like a nighttime mission. So. And then you also have some of these big, they almost look like huge pogs almost. And these are going to have different people on it, like this one says Deep Agent, this one says Analyst. And there's a red side and a blue side, so if you think that a particular person is a Informant Analyst, you can put it on the red side. Or if you think he might be a Rebel Analyst, you can put it on the blue side. And then lastly, you can have these cards here, which are actually really good reference cards. You'll have this big one, which is double-sided. And then you'll have this small one, which is just the one-sided. They're going to have a list of every different role that you can have. And there's different combinations of how these work. So as an example, if you're a signaler, you'll do one thing as the informant and something different if you are a rebel. So it will change what you actually do, depending on which affiliation you have, as far as if you're one of the informants or if you're one of the rebels. So, I did a layout here of the preferred starting round, depending on player count. So usually if you're playing like a 3-player game, you would have a reassigner, an investigator, and a thief. Then you would add in a signal on 4 players, an observer 5 players, investigator 6 players, signaler 7, etc., etc. And so each of these are going to add in different things. Now there are a couple different roles that aren't included in that first version, because you have like a revealer, the analyst, confirmer, defector, deep agent, and rogue. And these kind of add additional elements to the game. So if you decide you kind of want to mix it up a little bit, or if you don't like some of these roles here, you can kind of throw out some of them, put in some new roles. This is just simply the suggested first game of what you probably want to put in that, because it kind of gives everybody a little bit more of a feel for the game itself, as compared to adding some of these which may have either a little bit more complex abilities, which can then interact differently with people, or may just change things in a certain way. So once you determine how many players you're going to have, so let's say we're going to play with, we'll go with 7. And we're going to go with just the recommended things to have. Now once you have your 7 cards for the specialist, so this deck here should be 7 cards, because each player is going to receive 1. You will then have 10 of these cards. You will always put in 3 informants, because there's a very good chance they could actually end up in headquarters as well. But there will always be 3 informants regardless of the number of players. And then you'll get the number of players plus 3 will be the total number of cards. So since we're playing with 7 players, we'll have plus 3 onto that, so we'll actually use 10 of these. So if we had, say, 10 players, we'll have 13 of these. So it's always the players plus 3. And then you're going to go ahead and shuffle these up. And then you're going to hand out one of these ideas to each player. And then the remaining 3 will be put into the headquarter area here. So at this point we know that each player now has their specific group that they work for, and that'll be annotated by these IDs. You cannot look at these throughout the game. The only thing you can do is check it at the start of the round itself. And then each player is going to go through their particular actions. And then lastly, we're going to have specialist cards. And with the specialist cards, we're going to give one of these to each player as well. So at this point, we know that each player has an ID, and then they have a specialist. Now, normally you would not reveal any of these cards, so right now what we're actually going to do though is reveal everything. That way we can kind of work through and figure out how everything is going to play here. On this one, we have a Rebel Observer, we have a Rebel Signaler, Rebel Thief, Rebel Investigator. This one is a Informant Signaler. This one is a Rebel Investigator. And this one is a Rebel Reassigner. And we'll probably go ahead and just make this player here the... they're going to be the controller, which basically means they're going to lead what actually happens. Now at this table we know that there are going to be 6 rebels. Now the players themselves don't know that. The only person that knows that they are for sure an informant right now is the informant themselves. So at the beginning of the round, everyone's going to put their head down. Now once everyone put their head down, all the informants are going to look up and then see each other. In this case, we know that this informant is going to look up and see only himself. At that point, he's going to put his head back down. Now, first you're going to start off with the controller, and the controller will be with this marker here. With this, they are a Rebel Observer, and if you go through these here, you'll see that the Rebel Observer has no specialist action, so they don't actually do anything when they have this combination here. Now we're going to have the Rebel Signaler. What the Rebel Signaler goes is here. Now if they were an informant, they're going to tap in informant on your immediate left or right. So at this point they can either tap, if there's an informant next to them, they could tap one of those informants. However, if they are a rebel, they tap the player on your immediate left or right. So this kind of helps signal a little bit of information for everyone, because if the signaler taps someone just kind of randomly, they know that as a rebel, if they tap this person here, and this person knows for sure that they are not an informant, they could also suspect that this person is also not an informant. Whereas if they were an informant, they have to tap another informant. So that being said, if they didn't tap anyone, then you can kind of deduce a little bit off of that. Now this one here is the Rebel Thief. Now with the Thief, if you were an informant, you're going to view your own ID. This allows you to take a look at your ID itself, and it kind of gives you an idea, am I still an informant at this point? Now if it's a little bit later in the round, then that's how they can determine like who's going to actually do that. And another thing to mention too is that how it actually works though is that the controller is always the first player, and when they do their action, they're going to complete their action, and then at that point they're going to say mission completed. Once I say mission completed, this player is now going to do their next action. Once they've done their action, they'll put their head down, say mission completed. This will go to the thief. With the thief, as a rebel, you can switch your ID with another player's ID, and then you can view your new ID. So if I switch my ID with, say, this one, you'll actually take their ID card and then replace it with your own. But you could have also stolen an informant, but you get to look at it first to see if you're the informant at that point. And then we have the Investigator. Look at another player's ID. Now, if you use this, you can then check on someone else's ID card to see what, who they're affiliated with at the time. Next one is the Signaler. This was the informant one. As I mentioned with the Rebel one, with this informant, he would have to tap in an informant on your immediate left or right. So now that there's not an actual informant next to him, he cannot tap either of them. So at that point, he's just going to say, well, I can't do anything, so mission completed. This Rebel here is another Investigator, so they can look at another player's ID, so they can check another ID card. And then you have the Reassigner, which is going to switch two other players' IDs. So with this, I can swap this one and this one, or this one and that one, whoever you want to. It's completely up to you, but you cannot actually look at what you're switching. Now, if you're the informant, you switch a Rebel player's ID with an informant ID. So you're going to go through this area here, and you're going to switch one of the cards that you know that they didn't look up when you asked for informants. You're going to find a informant in here, and then you're going to swap that player with it. So as a informant here, you're going to be able to do a little bit more damage out here because you're able to pull one of the informants out of the headquarters and turn someone else into that. So you could very well change their ID without them actually knowing it occurred. Now, once everyone has taken their action, so once all the actions have been completed, once it finishes the last person, the controller, which was the first player that has this marker here, can then check their ID. It's a special action that they kind of get, just to make sure that they are either the same role still, or if they've switched since then. So that is something they will do at the very end of that night. So once all that occurs, then at this point you could do conversation. Now, in most games like this, we usually suggest about 1 minute per player, but you can, as the initial game, you can then set it for a little bit higher, say 10 minutes or 12 minutes or whatever. But you're going to have a certain amount of conversation time to kind of help deduce who is going to actually be what role and try to take down one of the informants. Now, at the start of the round, each player is going to introduce themselves as a specific role. Now, you don't have to be truthful, nor do you really have to actually say for sure which one you really are, but this kind of is a good opening time to do so. So as an example, let's say this player declared they're a thief, this person declared they're a signaler, observer, reassigner, another observer, thief, reassigner. And they could say whatever they want. Some of these roles they may be lying about, but we just threw out some as an example. But each player is going to just state that I am this particular role, but they don't have to be truthful on it. They don't have to really be truthful about any information that's given, so it's kind of one of those things you just kind of have to see if you trust them and possibly ask some questions to see if they're lying to you as well. And a lot of times what you can do is kind of work it backwards. If you know that, say, this person's a thief, it means they probably stole from another card. But let's say they stole from this guy here, and I was a investigator. And I looked at this card, I could probably then say, well, I know what you stole here because I investigated this player. Or I know what you might have given this player because I investigated you before you stole. The signalers can help to do certain things too, because the signaler can, if he is an informant, can only poke another informant. Whereas if they are a rebel, the rebels will be able to poke either one. So if a rebel gets poked by someone, that very well means that they were poked by another rebel, because that's the only way they can actually do that. And so it's going to be a lot of different stuff as far as how they can interact with each other based on what their affiliation is versus their job. So, as I mentioned, I'll kind of go over the rest of the roles here. We went over Reassigner, which basically switches around IDs, or they take something from the HQ and give it to someone. With the Analyst, you can view another player's specialist card. So the Analyst can actually look at what job you have. So they might be able to call you out as lying on your job if you proclaim that you are something that you're not. Confirmer, you get to view your own ID. So whenever it gets to your turn, your mission will be simply to look at your own ID, see if you're still that ID, put it back face down. Revealer, you can flip another player's ID face up. If it's an informant, you flip it back face down. So what I can do is I could flip over one of these. Now if it's an informant, I'd have to put it back down. That way you don't just throw them under immediately. Now you could proclaim that that person is, but the question is, will they trust you? But that's the job of the Revealer. The Observer has no actual abilities, whereas the Investigator gets to look at another player's card that's both Informant and Rebel. So either one you are, you get to look at another player's ID. You have your Signaler, as I mentioned, which will tap someone on your left or your right, and this will be simply a matter of whether or not you are a informant or if you're a rebel, because it's going to give you a little bit different ability depending on which one it is. The Thief, as a informant, you get to view your ID, and then with the rebels, you switch your ID with another player's ID, and then view your new ID. So that was the one where you can actually steal it from someone else, take a look at it to make sure what it is, and then that's what you are, they take yours. And then, as I said, there are a couple additional ones that we didn't show here. Like you have your Deep Agent. You raise your thumb but do not open your eyes during informant reveal. And what that what that means is that when, at the beginning of the round, when the informants look up at each other, they're going to see each other. But if you have the Deep Agent, instead of revealing yourself and looking up at them as the informant, you're going to stick out your thumb. Now why this matters is because if I was the informant Deep Agent, I don't know who my other informants are. All I know is that there are other informants out there, but I don't know who they are, even though I'm one of the informants. However, if you are a rebel Deep Agent, you don't get any special action to that. So depending on if an informant got it or if a rebel got it, is going to determine pretty heavily on who the Deep Agent can really trust. Defector. With the Defector, you can view your own ID card as a informant. Whereas with the Rebel, they actually will look for a informant card in the HQ, and then they take that informant card and then they become that informant. Then lastly, you have the Rogue. You switch a Rebel player's ID card with another informant player's ID. So that one basically allows you to switch a couple things around. And then if you were the Rebel, you can view your ID card. So you can look at your own ID card as well. And a lot of the times when it has view your own ID card, it does help you to figure out, well, this was who I was at the start of the round, but if I'm something different now, that means there might have been a few people that switched some stuff with me, and I could probably help deduce maybe who did the switching, as well as who was switched with what. And as I said, a lot of that's going to be the negotiation of the game. You have to try to figure out who these different players are, and what actions they took, and then kind of play, rewind on it, and try to find out in what order did these things happen. And since we know that the player order is going to be based on who the controller is, and then going in the single direction, that each of these actions are going to happen in that order. So let's say if we knew that this was a thief, he's going to steal a card before, say, this other thief does something. We also know the thief will act before this reassigner will act. So let's say he stole from this thief, and then it comes all the way around. This reassigner switches these two back. As far as he knows, he's still this role. But then the reassigner knows that he swapped them back. So there's a lot of different ways this can go, and depending on the order of things and who proclaims what. And with all that being said, there's still a very good chance people are just completely lying as well. Because just because I proclaimed I'm a thief doesn't actually mean I'm one of the thieves. I could be an observer. I could be a signaler. But because maybe I couldn't tap anyone as a signaler, maybe I proclaimed to be an observer. And there's a couple different ways that a lot of these roles could work as well. So once you've done all that, there's going to be the last voting phase, because as I mentioned, it is timed based on whatever time you decided to put down. So let's say it was 10 minutes. After the 10 minutes is over, you're going to have a final vote. And how this is going to work is that at the very end of the game, you're going to do like a 3, 2, 1, and everyone's going to point at someone else to see who they're going to try to kill. Now, if they actually, say, kill this informant, then we know that the rebels will win. If there's a tie between who is voted for, let's say this person had 2 votes, this person had 2 votes, they will both be killed, in which case the rebels still win because they took out the informant. If you just kill the informant, the rebels also win because you killed one of the informants. Let's say, however, they killed this rebel. Now, if you kill the rebel, then that means the rebel team loses because they did not kill an informant. You do have to kill an informant in order to win, and if you weren't able to defeat an informant, then at that point, you can no longer win it. But that's the game of One Night Revolution, and I hope you enjoyed the video. If you've enjoyed the video, definitely check out our video. We'll have another one posted next week of how to play a different game. And we post these every week, so if you do enjoy it, definitely check it out. And also in the very near future, we're going to actually be including a lot of new videos of reviews. What I'm going to try to do is 5-minute reviews and try to do a very quick run through of a game of what kind of mechanics you can see, what kind of pros and cons that I like about the game and things I dislike about the game. And then a very general overview of like how it plays. But these are going to be paired up with my how to play videos like this one. So you'll probably also see a separate video for this game later, showing what I like about the game, dislike about the game. And then, but it should be a quick 5-minute overview as compared to these videos, which are usually 20-30 minutes or so. But as I said, hope you enjoyed the video. If you haven't liked and subscribed yet, if you enjoyed the video, go ahead and like it, comment, subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. Otherwise, thank you for watching Rundlii Gaming, and you have a good day.